Hey guys, it's Katie and I'm going to be your host this week for this week's episode of the Academy Bites podcast. So, just a little bit of an introduction. I teach French and Spanish here. My degree in college was French, Spanish and Italian, so I guess that means that I'm like a fully qualified language nerd. I don't know. But basically what I want to do for you guys this week is just chat to you about what to expect for leaving Cert languages. So, like I said, I teach French and Spanish, so I can only really speak for those two, but I would imagine that in terms of like breakdown of marks, all that kind of stuff, this is going to work for German as well. Anyway, what our goal for this episode of the podcast is I want to stick to the point, and I want to just tell you what you actually need to know about languages for leaving Cert. I want to stay away from things like textbooks, what you might hear like in your WhatsApp groups or in the locker room or anything like that. And I just want to talk to you from like both a student and a teacher's perspective as to like what I think is the best way to approach French and Spanish for your leaving cert exam. Okay, so you guys know that sixth year, from what you hear from everyone, is a very stressful year, it's a very busy year, and it goes by like that. Okay, it's like the second Christmas comes around, after Christmas it's like mocks, midterms, mock orals, oral exams, Easter holidays, leaving cert, done. Okay, so the first piece of advice I'm going to give all of you, especially when it comes to languages, is to try and front load your year as much as possible. Because if you think about it, when you start school in September, right, you've got September, October, November and December, and all you really have until your Christmas holidays is 1 week off, and that tends to be the time where you have the least amount of work to do. Okay, like obviously, yeah, like you might have, I don't know, October exams or Christmas exams or something, but you don't have anything that's like worth anything for your leaving cert exams within that first really long term. Okay, so the more work you get done in that first term, the less you're going to have to do to like play catch up after Christmas. So first thing I'm going to tell you to do, and I would imagine that half of you that are listening to this are going to be like, she's joking, like there's no way, and the other half are going to be like, solid piece of advice, I'm actually going to do that. So to those of you that are actually going to take this piece of advice, get your oral answers done by the time you come back to school after Christmas. Okay, for so many different reasons, right? The first thing is that feeling of like smugness that you're going to have from just being like that over prepared, I don't know, like you're gonna just feel class about yourself, put it that way. So like have your moment and just do it for that feeling. But also it means that from like a more sensible point of view, if you have all of your answers written at like by the time you come back after Christmas, that means that you have all of that work done and that you're not freaking out coming up to like mocks, coming up to mock oral exams, and then all of a sudden coming up to the oral exam itself feeling like you haven't got enough stuff prepped. Do you know what I mean? So like come back to school after Christmas with your oral answers done, give them to your teacher and be like, here, like I did these, would you mind having a skim through these just to make sure that they're okay? And then even if you don't look at them for like another 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever, they're still done. Like that's not something that you have to worry about. In terms of advice I can give you about preparing your answers, whether again this is for French or Spanish or German, whatever, my advice to you would be, when you're writing your answers, time yourself saying them out loud, which is again maybe why you might want to do them over Christmas holidays, so you can just like sit in your room and like speak French or Spanish or German or whatever to yourself without any sort of judgment. Like you don't want to be that person that's like whispering to themselves in like the corner of the library, you know, in the middle of school kind of thing. So I would say you want to time your answers and you're aiming for 12 minutes. Okay, you will never in a million years use all of that material, but because you don't know what's going to happen on the day, you don't know if you're going to freak out, you might not remember one of your answers, you might get asked some sort of jump scare question, whatever, that like even if you only use 9 of those 12 minutes worth of material, you still have 3 minutes of like insurance material there. And it will also help when like the week before the oral exams comes up and you're like panicked to death about all the stuff that you have to have done, that like having those 3 minutes of extra material done is going to be such a, like, I don't know, like a relief or like a reassurance, that kind of thing. So that's my first biggest piece of advice. I think I have on my oral notes for my 6th years that their script is due for the 12th of January. So if you want to use that as a guideline for your own, go ahead. The other thing then I would say, and this is just to be completely transparent, if this part is ever just used to be spoken about for the oral exams, like if this is like cropped just for the oral exams. The other biggest piece of advice I can give you for them is to stay away from, I don't know, like your classmates or your friends or whatever for like the day or two before the oral exams. From what we know, like what I've been told, like up to now, your oral exams are still taking place the first week of your Easter holidays, and what they will do is, let's say you end school on the Friday, the oral exams will start the Saturday after that, and they'll run until the Thursday, right? And then the Friday of that week then is Good Friday. So let's say hypothetically, if your exam is on the Saturday afternoon, stay away from your friends the Saturday morning and the Friday night. Do not meet up with them. Don't be like going through a Snapchat message or like WhatsApp groups or whatever. And the main reason I'm saying that is because the more you talk to people, the worse you're going to feel about what you've done. And like your friends aren't going to be there during the oral exam. It's just going to be you, what you've prepared, and the examiner. And everyone is a secret studier, okay? I don't care what anyone says. Everyone is a secret studier. Everyone has prepped something. All those people that are like, oh my God, like I'm so nervous about the oral exams, like I haven't done anything. Yes, they have, okay? So don't fall into that trap either. But you just don't want to surround yourself with people that are going to freak you out more, because it's already nerve-wracking enough. So like when you go in to do your oral exam, find, like, I remember when I did mine, there was like this like landing at the top of a set of stairs that like we weren't really meant to go to, and I like just went and like it was on like the third floor, and I like just went and like sat on that landing for like 20 minutes before my oral exam and just read through my script one more time, and then just walked straight to the oral exam from that point, because I was like, I don't want to sit with my friends and like hear what they've done and freak myself out that I haven't done it, all that kind of stuff. And for those of you that might be listening to this that are absolutely terrified of the oral exams, I was that person as well. I went into my French oral exam, bawling my eyes, crying, like quivering like a leaf. My document was, I swear to you, this is no word of a lie. My document was an A3 collage of photos of Lady Gaga. Like, and I promise you, and it was like outfits that she had worn that were designed by French designers. And I need you to imagine, like, put that image into your mind of like an 18-year-old with like a red face and red eyes from crying, quivering, shaking, holding an A3 collage. Let me repeat that, A3, okay? Going into an exam with a like 65-year-old French man as her examiner. I'd say I walked in and he was like, send it back. He was like, please, like, what is this? But like after the first minute, I was like, okay, we're fine. And then all of a sudden the oral exam goes like that. So if I can survive, like, you know, the red face, the quivering like a leaf, all that kind of stuff, you'll be fine, okay? Like thousands of students go through it every year. It's 12 minutes of your life. You got through 3 years of a pandemic. You'll be fine, don't worry about it. Okay, next things then that I can tell you that are like generic pieces of advice for anyone who's learning a language for Leaving Cert. I'm going to say this from a student's perspective as opposed to a teacher's perspective, because from a teacher it's far too predictable. Your grammar is so much more important than you think, okay? Your teachers aren't like throwing verbs at you and throwing verb tests at you because like we like to watch you suffer. From like an exam perspective, your grammar is worth so many marks in your oral exam. For argument's sake, in French it's worth 30 marks out of 100. The Spanish one is broken down slightly differently, but then when it comes to your written exam, half of your marks for every piece of written work that you produce, whether that's French or Spanish, an opinion piece, a diary entry, a dialogue construction, an email, it doesn't matter what it is, half of your marks for any piece of written French or Spanish that you produce goes for your language. And that essentially means your grammar. So that's your verbs, that's your sentence structure, it's you knowing the gender of nouns, and how to match adjectives and articles and all that kind of stuff with it. So the stuff that you might feel like, I don't know what way to phrase this, the stuff that you don't really see that much in 5th and 6th year, that like you would have learned in like 1st or 2nd year, that's also as important as like all the really complex stuff that you see in 6th year. So like I would nearly say, for anyone who's listening to this that is like good at languages, or like is listening to this like maybe like later in the year, like in 5th or 6th year, if anyone here knows what the subjunctive is, the subjunctive is like, I don't know, worth a tenth of the marks that like basic stuff like knowing the gender of your nouns and stuff is. So like, don't neglect the more basic stuff that you kind of feel like, oh, this is so easy when I'm studying it, like I don't need to study it, like that kind of stuff. You do, because that's your bread and butter. Like that's the most important part of your grammar, with like all of your basic tenses, all that kind of stuff. That's what you need to focus on more than like the really complex stuff. The complex stuff is like the garnish on top of a nice meal in a restaurant. Do you know what I mean? That like, I don't want a plate of like parsley flakes. Okay, yeah, they make my meal look nice, whatever, but I still want the stuff that's underneath it as well, which is like your more basic stuff. Okay, so don't neglect the stuff that you think is really easy and then end up going into the exam having not revised the easy stuff and getting all of that stuff wrong. So that's that. Okay, next thing I'm going to say then, I'm obviously speaking from like a language teacher's perspective, but like I suppose this works for every Leaving Cert subject. The more familiar you are with the structure of your exams, the better. So my advice to you would be, and again, your teachers are going to tell you at the start of the year, like get exam papers, and like the war that happens between sixth year students and their teachers about getting exam papers is wild. Like, why am I chasing you around the school being like, why have you not got a set of exam papers yet? Guys, they're a tenner, like, do you know what I mean? Like, and you need them. And if you don't want to buy them, like, you can go online and print them all for free. But your teachers are telling you to get exam papers for your sake. Like it doesn't make any difference to me whether or not you have them, it's for you. The reason being is that your exam papers and your textbooks are two wildly different things. And like, what's in your textbook isn't necessarily what's going to be on your exam. So the quicker you have a set of exam papers and you start actually using them and becoming familiar with like what questions you have to answer, what kind of things come up in the exam. If you open up a set of exam papers in like November, and you're like, I don't actually know what this question means, or I don't know how to answer this question. If you deal with that in November, it means that when April comes around or May comes around, that you're not freaking out being like, I've just spent the last 9 months doing this question wrong. So like, for your own sake, for every subject, especially for languages as well, get to grips with the exam paper sooner rather than later. And like, there's so many things that you can do to help yourself with that. Again, you can buy the exam papers, you can go on to examinations.ie, you can use Crezam, whatever it is, but like, you can like use those exam papers, and even if they seem really scary at the start of the year, you'd so much rather than be scary in September than May, if that makes any sort of sense. And again, that's for every subject. So after that then, the last couple of things I want to speak about for languages is your oral exam. Oral exams are probably one of the easiest things that you can be doing to study, and they're one of the things that you guys tend to not enjoy doing, which I get it. Like, I remember like we used to get killed in school like when we were doing supervised study, and we'd like have to go and tell the supervisor that we wanted to do an oral exam, and that's why we were going to have our headphones in, and she'd literally like stand behind you for 40 minutes to make sure that that's what you were actually doing. And this was like pre-social media, so it was like you'd send like your mum one text being like, yes, I want chicken for dinner, and she'd be like only short of like slapping you being like, go back to your oral exam. So it maybe doesn't need to be that extreme, but your oral exam is 20% of your final grade for French and Spanish. I think it's the same for German as well. My advice to you guys would be to do one of them a week. That probably seems wild to a lot of you. For the sake of, if you wanted to break it up Monday to Friday, it would maybe take you between 5 and 8 minutes to do, like, to finish an oral exam. If you did 5 to 8 minutes Monday to Friday, you'd have one oral exam done, as opposed to having to sit down on a Saturday and do it for like 40 minutes. But for those of you that are going to be like, I'm so bad at listening, of course you're bad at listening if you're not doing them, okay? Like, that's just the reality of it. Last couple of pieces of advice that I would give you: stay on top of your studying, start sooner rather than later. Even if it's not necessarily studying, start your prep, start making your notes, start making your flashcards, or start making your flashcards on Quizlet, or your vocab copies, all that kind of stuff. You want to start that as soon as possible. Like I said at the beginning, front load your year so that you're not left at the end of the year trying to play catch up and also studying for the real thing as well. So yeah, sorry, that's everything I have to say, guys, for French and Spanish. if you have any questions, if you're watching this online, feel free to leave them in whatever sort of comment section there is down below, or if you're listening to this on just like normal podcasts, feel free to message us on Instagram with any of your questions or whatever, and I will probably, I don't know, be back later on this year. So thank you so much, and best of luck with 6th year. Adios.